Welcome to a bonus episode of the MMA Lockcast. I'm your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, your boy on social media at MMA LOTN, and the architect behind the MMA Fight Archive, ensuring you leave no stone unturned for these upcoming MMA events. You want to know how I know as much as I do about the fighters I'm about to quickly break down for you guys for this PFL Europe card? The MMA Fight Archive is to contribute to that. We got a 7-day free trial for you to check it out for free, covering over 4,600 fighter profiles from all over the world, across 17 different promotions as well. I'll be adding a few more in the new year so we can continue to expand this database that we have. Check out why we have over 110 subscribers on the service. Once again, 7-day free trial link available in the description below. All right. We got the last PFL event of the year. It is PFL Europe. This is their championship event, just as we had the championships for the regular PFL roster a couple weeks back. We also have ACA 182 and Cage Warriors 182. Interesting that they both actually have the same number there. Both of those events going down this weekend as well, but I'll only have written breakdowns for those on the MMA LOTN Patreon page. So if you want access to those, make sure you guys check that out. I also want to throw out there, we have KSW 101 and Octagon 65 going down over the next 2 weeks. I will only be breaking down one of those for you guys in another bonus episode of the MMA Lockcast. So let me know which of those two events you would like broken down. Drop a comment below and choose between KSW 101 or Octagon 65, and I will drop the breakdown accordingly for you guys. Otherwise, you can find the written breakdowns for those events on the MMA LOTN Patreon page. Now, it seems like the odds makers have taken their holidays a little bit early here, as there have been some fumbles in terms of getting odds out for some matchups. Even Cage Warriors, I only think they got 7 or 8 odds out for, I believe, the 9 fights that are completely scheduled for that. And even they have a wrong matchup posted on Bet Online there. And for PFL, only 8 of the 12 scheduled fights for PFL tomorrow morning are posted on BetOnline. They have a few fights that have been canceled, a few fights that have been changed, but they haven't been able to update that on the website. And then I was able to find 2 more fights on FanDuel. So we have a total of 10 of the 12 fights that I'll be quickly breaking down for you guys for this PFL Europe card. I'm not going to waste my time on fights that you guys can't bet on. So there you guys go. All right, like I said, I'm going to get pretty brief through a lot of these breakdowns just so we can get it out there. I wanted to get this out for you guys yesterday, but again, there was only 5 fights with odds yesterday. Now we've got 3 or 5 more, I guess, so enough to at least drop this video for you guys. So let's get right into it. First fight of the night, Claudio Pacella coming in at -165, going up against Oscar Ownsworth, who comes in at +135. Now, Pacella is a guy that I actually backed against Patrick Habirora, who co-main events this card back in March, and he made it closer than the odds indicated, but he ended up coming up short. And then I will never forgive myself for not going back to the Claudio Pacella well at +600 against Mark Ewan last time around, as he was able to crowd the space and absolutely bum rush Mark Ewan over the course of 15 minutes and win that fight with his pressure-heavy style. I thought the more technical striker in Mark Ewan would be able to get the better of Pacella, just as Habirora did, but it seemed as soon as Pacella landed early, Ewan had no answers for it. Ownsworth is a Muay Thai specialist who likes to utilize his range, utilize straight shots down the pipe, has a decent kicking game as well, likes to get flashy at times, but it's clear that when he's pressured and he's dealing with guys that throw with a lot of power, he usually ends up coming up short. He had an 8-fight unbeaten streak leading into his last matchup against Alfie Davis, where he ended up coming up short in that matchup, but that was a streak where 6 of those 8 opponents were either a 500 or less record, and they just were somewhat scrubs, let's be honest. I like Pacella here, who's been taking some solid action over the last 24 hours. Yesterday, I saw him at -130. Now he's up at -165. I believe he is the side here, as he'll do a good enough job in terms of crashing the space, crowding Ownsworth's space, and eventually, I think he eventually finds a knockout here within 2.5 rounds. But I could also see him just doing what he did against Mark Ewan and grinding this out with that forward pressure and offense. But give me Pacella and Pacella inside the distance. There are no odds or totals for PFL either, so I'm not going to get too far into it. All right, next up, Salvo Giudice coming in at plus 220, going up against Attila Kobas, who comes in at minus 280. Giudice making his pro debut here after going 11-9 on the amateur scene. Has a karate black belt. I don't see anything special in his game, whether it's from his striking, his defensive grappling, which doesn't look that great either. The most success I've seen him have is by bullying guys in the clinch, but a lot of those guys were, not as strong or as physical as him. Kobas, on the other hand, is 2-1 as a professional. Actually went 2.5 rounds with Basinger Kamsudinov, who went up against Sadrik Doumbé a couple of PFL events ago. So I was very impressed with that. He took off about 3 years after that, came back and was able to get a quick submission victory back in beginning of November, so not even over a month and a half ago. Not too much to really uncover about Kobas. There's not a lot of tape out there on him. Has trained at All Stars Sweden in the past. Has mixed it up with Morgan Charrier in the training room as well. I will lean with him to win this matchup, as I believe that he is more jiu-jitsu based and grappling based, and I think that'll be enough to put Giudice into bad positions and potentially find a submission. But I'd like to confirm things with the actual fight footage rather than just seeing things on Instagram or trusting that the public is betting the right guy here and making him a big favorite. So I'll pass on the chalk. I'm going to go Kobas, but yeah, not enough evidence out there or proof for me to actually back that with legitimate money there. Squash match here between Mathis Duragrin, who comes in at minus 1,200, going up against Yasin Chtatou, who comes in at plus 750. Chtatou is a slugger that loves to just throw big strikes, has some decent power. He stalks his opponents and headhunts them, whereas Duragrin is more 13-4 amateur record, 3-0 as a pro now. Does a great job in terms of taking his opponents to the ground and just absolutely smashing them there. And I'm expecting him to do that here once again to Chtatou, but minus 1,200, unparlayable. All right, next up, Daniel Miceli coming in at plus 350, going up against Florim Zendeli, who comes in at minus 550. This is a matchup between two guys who I don't believe are the best in the PFL Europe, this specific division either, right? Miceli won both of his first two matchups, being the big underdog, finishing both of his fighters within less than a minute and a half, and that's the power that he brings to the table, but he's still quite low level. Zendeli, on the other hand, was able to have a very easy performance against his first round opponent, and then last time around pulled off a big upset against Jack Grant, a fight that he got hurt in very badly in the first round, but managed to get some good control time in the second round, and I thought he actually lost the third round. I thought Grant did a great job in terms of defending and dishing out damage while defending, whereas Zendeli was just trying to go for takedowns and get some control, but two judges ended up giving it to Zendeli there, and he moves on to the finals. Both guys quite flaky. Miceli has a ton of big power in his hands, has a somewhat average grappling game. That's where Zendeli will obviously have the advantage here. I get why he's the big favorite, but he is way too flaky and way too hittable on the feet. And considering the type of knockouts that we've been seeing from Miceli as of late, it wouldn't surprise me at all to see him actually land a big shot on Zendeli here. So the official prediction is actually going to be Zendeli, as I do think I would rather go with a guy with the grapple heavy base that can be dominant there. But below average takedowns, below average striking as well. I think Miceli could actually land some big shots on the feet here and potentially find a finish there too. So the prediction is going to be Zendeli, but I might sprinkle a little bit on Miceli considering he's plus 350. In a low level fight like this, I don't mind taking a shot on the big underdog with a big knockout power as well. So again, prediction Zendeli, bet probably Miceli. All right, moving on to the next one here. We got Paulina Wisniewska coming in at minus 650, going up against Valentina Scatizzi, who comes in at plus 400. Now, this was actually supposed to be Wisniewska versus Chanel Dyer. Dyer defeated Scatizzi in the semifinals, but Dyer pulls out Scatizzi, jumps in, gets this final opportunity here, but I believe Wisniewska is just going to be too much of an issue for her. Wisniewska does a great job in terms of the clinch, also does a great job with her grinding, grappling, but even in the striking realm, she uses her range very well, throwing straight shots down the pipe, and I think that's going to cause Scatizzi a lot of problems. Scatizzi does have a tougher strength of schedule, I believe, although Wisniewska's win over Karolina Wojcik last time around was impressive. I can't get behind this wide line, though. nor can I trust Scatizzi as a big underdog in this spot either. I think Wisniewska could win this fight up against the cage, just as she won the second and third rounds pretty clearly against Wojciech last time around. And I think she has that stringy, lengthy strength that I think is going to cause Scatizzi a lot of problems here. So give me Wisniewska by decision, but minus 650 is just a little bit too wide here. All right, next up, we got Jakub Kaszuba coming in at minus 225, going up against Connor Hughes, who comes in at plus 185. Now, Kaszuba might as well change his nickname to Kaszuba, considering last time around, or last season, he won the PFL Europe tournament, cashed a $100,000 paycheck, and won a PFL Europe title. And for some reason, he's back on the PFL Europe scene where he should have been upgraded to the main roster by now. But he finds himself in the finals once again and able to cash a potential another $100,000 check and win another PFL belt. But he's 13-0 and just knows how to win. This guy does a great job in terms of grinding his opponents out, utilizing a decent enough striking game to eventually get to the grinding grappling where he is the most effective. He does a great job in terms of going 25 minutes if he needs to, or even 15 minutes, but he does a great job of never settling for bad positions and always looking to get the advantage over his opponents. There are times where he could look a little bit shaky in the striking realm, but we have seen him come back and pull off, somewhat comebacks. Not in many fights because he's usually in the driver's seat in a lot of his fights, but he's going up against a prospect here in Connor Hughes, who came up short against Dylan Tuke in his first PFL Europe fight last year, but has done enough good work in this season to make it to the finals, showcasing that he has solid knockout power, just as he showed in his first fight. And then the second fight, he showed some decent striking. He is normally a guy that likes to go to his grappling and grind opponents out or find finishes from that top position, but as he keeps taking steps up in competition, he's knowing that he has to rely on his striking a little bit more. Luckily for him, I thought he did enough I believe in the first and second round with his striking, sticking and moving against a bull of an opponent that he was facing last time around, and Ignacio Capella, I believe the guy's name was. There's a case that Capella deserved to win that fight. We saw him clearly win the third round as Hughes was starting to slow down, dealing with the constant pressure. And I think that's ultimately going to be the case for him here against Kaszuba, where Kaszuba will do a good enough job in continually pressing Connor Hughes here. It might be competitive early, but I believe Kaszuba will do a great job in terms of not settling for bad positions, constantly keeping the pressure on Hughes, breaking him, and eventually finishing him in the third or fourth round here. Kaszuba was around minus 280 earlier this week. Some clear action coming in on Connor Hughes, but I was more than happy to take minus 280 on Kaszuba. Now you're giving me minus 225. Give me the chalk, and let's Kaszuba once again here. So give me Kaszuba inside the distance. All right, probably the fight that I'm looking forward to most this entire weekend, as we have Lewis McGrillen-Evans coming in at minus 245, going up against Alexander Lustre, who comes in at plus 195. Now, McGrillen-Evans took his first professional defeat last year at the hands of Wesley Maia, but has managed to bounce back this year and went to an absolute war and what could have gone down as the best PFL fight of all time against Dean Garnett back in September. Instant classic, both guys dropping each other, having a ton of success, but ultimately McGrillen-Evans gets the knockout in the third round and advances to the finals of the tournament. He is an absolute aggressive beast, crashing the pocket repetitively and landing big strikes. We saw him a little bit more disciplined earlier this year against Zarhovs, where he may have learned a lesson from the Wesley Maia fight, and he showed some great discipline, some grappling, some clinching, landing his big strikes, but not being as aggressive to gas himself out. But Garnett forced him to be a little bit more aggressive because Garnett was on the gas the entire time, and McGrillen-Evans was more than happy to meet him in the pocket and exchange those big strikes. McGrillen-Evans is a high-level prospect, but he still needs to continue working in terms of being more technical and more disciplined. And he's going up against a very dark horse, pretty much, in the PFL Europe roster here in Alexander Lustre, who I believe has a clean 9-1 record. His only loss coming to Max Holzer by split decision, who is a very high-level prospect on the OKTAGON scene. Make sure you guys tune in and watch his fights. But Lustre was able to go back and forth with him, ended up coming up short on 2 judges' scorecards there. But very slick with his submissions, very, very good in terms of 5 of his 9 wins coming by submission, but he's also a very slick and smooth striker as well. He does leave some openings to get clipped at times, but usually does a great job in terms of moving his feet with his hands and then landing those straight shots down the pipe, doing a great job with club and sub opportunities as well. This is a very close fight. I saw the odds around minus 185 for McGrillen-Evans a couple of days ago, and now he's ballooned up to minus 245, and that was enough to force my hand to go on the Luster side here. In terms of a prediction, I have to go with McGrillen-Evans because of his strength of schedule advantage here and the big power that he has in his hands, which, we've seen Luster get hit in the past, and he's definitely susceptible to getting hurt here. But Luster could also counter the aggressive striking style of McGrillen-Evans and possibly get a club and sub victory of his own. So this is a very close fight between two dangerous finishers. Again, prediction here will be McGrillen-Evans, but I believe this is a much closer fight. This should be closer to like minus 150, minus 130 McGrillen-Evans. So I'm going to have to take a shot on Luster here just for odds sake. This guy could be the next big thing coming out of Germany, considering everything that I've been seeing from him as of late. But now it's about proving it and doing it against guys that provide legitimate resistance. And McGrillen-Evans is definitely one of those guys. So again, big step up in competition for Luster, but definitely worthy of taking a little bit of a nibble on him around that plus 200 line. But I'm going to go official prediction as McGrillen-Evans by knockout. Our next up, we got a showcase heavyweight matchup here between Groguhe coming in at minus 600, going up against Sene, who comes in at plus 425. Two sluggers here, right? Groguhe, mainly known for that unfortunate incident at a PFL card earlier this year, I believe, where he got... he showcased a very lackadaisical approach to the start of all of his fights for the first 3 or 4 pro fights that he had, but he learned a big lesson on the biggest stage that he had performed at to date, where he just walked lazily to the middle of the cage against Islam Mazarov and eventually got head kicked within 10 seconds and knocked out. He's had 2 fights since then on the regional scene, and he showcased a much more enthusiastic version of himself, which has led to him going 2-0 now on a 2-fight winning streak. But there are still some holes in his game that can be exploited by much more well-rounded fighters. He's still a headhunter who loves to stalk his opponents. Nothing methodical or genius about his approach. He just wants to take opponents' heads off. He seems like a very low-level poor man's version of Derek Lewis. We saw his heart and grit allow him to get the victory last time around, where he would look like he was slowing down a lot, was being put in bad positions, was dealing with a very bad cut, but luckily was able to get a dominant position in the second round, which ultimately led to him getting a rear naked choke. His opponent Sene comes from a kickboxing background, has a salty 5-7 record, can get the takedown and do some good work from that top position, has some, decent movement speed and striking for a guy with a 5-7 record, but it seems like he is an issue when it comes to his durability. If he gets hit cleanly, it seems like he often looks for the door or for the exit, and I believe Groguhe can absolutely do that here, but Groguhe is not a level of fighter that I want to be trusting at minus 600. Sene has the speed advantage and possibly the technical striking advantage as well, but I'm scared that Sene will, as soon as he gets hit with a big shot, he'll probably curl up and look for the exit. So I'm going to go Groguhe as my prediction by knockout here, but you have to be very wary considering the technical advantages that Sene could have here. Very low-level fight. I want nothing to do with it. All right, next up, Habirora coming in at minus 700, going up against Catalan Safta, who comes in at plus 500. It's clear that the PFL is getting behind Habirora as he has a big following through social media, and he's obviously had a very lengthy amateur career where he went 21-6. He's now 4-0 as a professional. Went up against a very tough Claudio Pacella earlier this year for the PFL. Good striker, straight shots down the pipe, decent grappling, although that's where opponents have been able to take advantage of him in the past. But it's really his speed and his range management, as well as his striking technique that has made him so special. I do see some holes in his game still that more experienced opponents might be able to take advantage of. But again, there's putting him in a position to succeed here. Now, Safta won't just roll over and give him the victory. He is a guy that's very aggressive. Body language usually starts to fall off around the 6th minute, and that's where we start to see him slow down, but he's still, whenever there's a grappling scenario engaged, he does a great job in terms of never settling for a bad position and always trying to get that dominant position, or at least get back out into range where he can just get back to throwing pot shots and trying to catch his breath again. I think he's going to struggle to do that here against Habirora, who will be the quicker and faster striker, and I think Habirora could also shut down the grappling game of Safta here. Look for Habirora to start gaining momentum in deeper water, but I think it'll be harder to put Safta away, who's a true vet, like maybe not a vet, but like a fighter's fighter in a sense that it's going to be hard to put him away. So unless Habirora puts him out cleanly, which I just don't see happening, I think this ends up going the full 15 minutes and we see Habirora win it on the scorecards. But minus 700 is not a spot that I want to be paying here. All right, main event, as we got the second of two, French stars, if you want to say it here, headlining this PFL Europe card. If it's not Cedric Doumbé, it's going to be Abdouraguimov, as he comes in at minus 1,200 here, going up against Laureano Staropoli, who comes in at plus 750. We know what the Lazy King is all about. He wants to get fights to the ground, and he wants to find submissions. He's won 8 straight fights since 2020, and his lone defeat has come to a fighter he's already defeated, in Jara Hussein Al-Sawali. 12 of his 18 wins are by submission. He is a guy that wants to get fights to the ground, and he doesn't usually take the traditional path to getting fights to the ground. Obviously, if he can get the usual takedown, he'll go for it, but he can also, engage in the clinch, get the back of his opponents, hop on the back of his opponents, and eventually work to a dominant position where he can get submissions. One of the funner fighters on the roster, does a great job in terms of seeking submissions and coming through with them. But just as we saw when he went up against Jack Grant, fights can be close when he's fighting guys that actually have some grappling up their arm or up their sleeves as well. Luckily for him, he's going up against a striker here in Laureano Staropoli, who's not that great. He went 3-0 for Aries FC after being released from the UFC in 2021. Turned his attention to PFL, where he's now 1-1, most recently coming off a submission loss to Murad Ramazanov back in April. Trains out of Teixeira MMA, I believe, or has done so in the past. Flashy striker, but I believe he's going to be up against it here against Abdouraguimov, who should not have too hard of a time getting this into the grappling realm and eventually getting a submission. Minus 1,200 is not a spot that I want any action on here, as Staropoli is obviously the better striker, but I think Staropoli will still struggle with keeping Abdouraguimov off of him, which will eventually lead to Abdouraguimov to winning this fight by submission. All right, there you guys go. Full card breakdown for PFL Europe. Maybe not full card. Obviously, odds on 2 fights still not available, so we're just going to skip those. Not a great card from betting perspective. If you want to go dog hunting, there are some spots as I've laid out, but for the most part, I think chalk ends up doing its thing on this card. All right, there you guys go. Reminder, UFC tomorrow as well. We got ACA on Sunday. Check out my Patreon page for the full track plays that I have for all these cards, not to mention written breakdowns and all these other great props and parlays that I got for you guys. Otherwise, I will see you guys sometime in the next 2 weeks for the either KSW or OKTAGON breakdown. Again, please vote in the comment section below which of those 2 cards you would like me to break down on YouTube, and the other one will be broken down on the Patreon page. So good luck on all your action this weekend, folks, and I'll see you guys again within the next 2 weeks at some point. Peace.
Last thing.